What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel and to the next episode of the Overwatch League offseason recap. Today is going to mostly be all about the London Spitfire, who finally announced their roster for the upcoming season throughout the last couple of days. We've got a few other things on the agenda besides the Spitfire, but this video is going to be mostly dedicated to them. With that in mind, let's get started. Before we get into the London thing though, I wanted to go over something that's hot off the presses. That's right, we're talking about ANS, who has officially announced his retirement from Pro Overwatch and being on the San Francisco Shock, of course. I mean, like, whoa. I know that, like, some people are definitely not going to be surprised over this, especially after they signed Glister, but I mean, still, it's so just out of nowhere, you know? He was literally the most dominant hit skin in the league, arguably the best sniper we had without a shadow of a doubt, and now he's just gone, just like that. ANS briefly explained a big reason why he's retiring from Pro Overwatch in the Shock's new tribute/goodbye video to him. Basically, he says a big reason why he's stepping away from the game is because of some ongoing health concerns. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it has to do with depression and some other mental stuff. And I mean, that's totally understandable. If I was in his shoes, I would probably do the same thing. I guarantee you that being a pro only has made his mental state worse, so step away from that. Get away from it. Sometimes you gotta think beyond the big picture and just take care of yourself. Think about you first for a change. Given how talented he is as a gamer, I'm sure he'll still be able to rack in views if he were to do streams and whatnot, so I'm not super worried about him. I just want him to get better and take the necessary steps he needs to start to feel more like himself. But nonetheless, it's still very, very sad to see him go because of how talented he was and how much he meant to the San Francisco Shock. A lot of people didn't even think that much of him as he came into the league because he was kind of this nobody, but then he had one of the quickest rises to stardom we've ever seen in league history, and he very much became one of the best sniper players to ever touch the game. It's a good thing the Shock got Glister, and again, it makes a lot of sense, but it's going to be really hard to replace ANS anyway, even though Glister is extremely talented, simply because ANS was on a different level, you know? It's really hard to put into words how dominant he was. Now I quickly just wanted to thank ANS as a player for everything he's done for the league because he provided so much entertainment and excitement all in such a short amount of time, and I'm going to miss it very much. So thank you so much, ANS, and I wish you nothing but the best of luck and that you can get healthy very soon. So in unsurprising fashion, a lot of the London players joining Blaze on the roster were promoted from their academy team, British Hurricane. It's been rumored for a long time now, so no surprises there. And with their contenders team being quite dominant, plus the idea of centering their team around European talent, it kind of made way too much sense for this to not come true. So the players announced since Monday are Hadi, Molf, Hybrid, Sparker, Reaper, and Kellex. Let's go over each of these players individually, then I'm going to discuss what I think of this team as a collective unit. Starting off with their tank line, Hadi will be up first. He is a main tank out of Germany who played a little bit of everything during the 6 months he spent on the Hurricane. Now, quick disclaimer, I've not gotten around to watching enough of EU contenders yet, but from the looks of it and what I've seen so far, he seems like a somewhat balanced player. Wrecking Ball and Reinhardt appear to be well within his comfort zone, so he might be a bit better at those heroes at least at the start. In my opinion, he appears to be one of the more capable players on this roster simply because of that flexibility and consistency that he possesses. Being able to show up in pretty much every meta that came his way during his time on British Hurricane is going to serve as a valuable asset to a team that is trying to prove a lot of doubters wrong. If you ask me, he does have what it takes to outplay most of the lower tier main tanks in the league. Hadi could very much be a difference maker in those types of matchups against teams that are around the skill level of London. He's not this untouchable tank player or anything like that, but he could be molded into somebody who's at least respectable. It's not going to be easy considering the elevation and competition compared to EU contenders, but he might learn a thing or two and grow a lot during his rookie year. With players he's already comfortable being around, plus a few veterans who have already been in the league backing him up, he's already in a better position than a lot of other rookies in the league. Now for Hadi's partner in crime, Molf. This off-tank out of Denmark has been around the block his fair share of times. Besides being a part of the British Hurricane core, Molf has played for a few other teams who have posted decent results, like the 2019 Denmark World Cup team and Shoes Money Crew. All of his past experiences made him get better and better until the point where he stood on top of the European scene. Molf is mostly known for his Sigma and Diva. Since his rise to stardom, Sigma has been meta a lot, so I can't really blame him for not being known for a bunch of different characters, you know? But as of right now, there's no shame in that. Sigma is ridiculously powerful, and it's hard to see that changing unless he really just gets completely nerfed into the ground, which hopefully does happen because we're all tired of seeing him. Overall though, I like Molf. He's good. Not amazing, but there's nothing wrong with that considering the competition at his position. He's honestly in a very similar boat to Hadi. he does have a chance to be a noticeable difference maker in any of those games where London plays a team around their level. Hadi and Mulf are going to be a strong point on this roster in my opinion. If you're a London fan who is tired of all the hate, this is something that could make you feel at least a little bit better. Again, it's hard to say how they'll perform against the stronger competition, but I do have confidence that they could pull their own weight against a couple of different teams at the very least. Now for the DPS. The two guys joining Blase in the rotation who are both hit-scan prospects are of course Hybrid and Sparker. So Hybrid is the one I'm not the hugest fan of. I get it, he's British, I think that's a fantastic way to make this team even more appealing to their audience, but the fact of the matter is that there were definitely some better options out there. The last time he played was in September while being a part of Team Doge. He was picked up as the replacement for Onigat and Kevster, but never really played as good as either of them. If he were to start, which is looking like it's going to be at least for the first few months of the year, I fear that he would be one of the worst starting hit scans in the league. No disrespect to the guy, he made the Overwatch League, which proves he is talented, but the competition is just so great, and he doesn't really stack up all that well in my opinion. If London got him over other prospects who most consider have a higher ceiling though, then maybe there is something in him that I just don't see. At least I'm hoping that's what this means. Trust me, London fans, I may have a doubtful mindset here, but I truly do hope I'm proven wrong. I want Hybrid to do well, it's just difficult to see that happening currently. Sparker I'm a bit more interested in though. He too is being promoted from British Hurricane, and the gameplay I have seen is pretty impressive. He has some good explosiveness to him. I've absolutely loved his Tracer and Ashe. It's very, very awesome. The Gauntlet gameplay I have seen is giving me a lot of hope. I could totally see him being the primary playmaker in this DPS rotation in specific metas that really suit his hero pool and overall playstyle. A very important thing to note about Sparker though is that he's not going to be eligible to play until June 10th when he finally turns 18. Assuming the league starts sometime in spring, that means he'll likely miss out on the first handful of games, and that's quite unfortunate, especially if Tracer remains a key piece of the meta. Also, side note, what's with Sweden producing all of these interesting DPS prospects as of late? First was Sharp and Kevster, now Sparker. It's like Sweden has this secret goldmine of mechanical geniuses or something. But anyway, I'm pretty excited to see what Sparker can do and how he's going to contribute to the Spitfire once he turns 18. I'm hoping that he can be a bright spot on this team, maybe even a guy who sparks some energy and motivation into the rest of his teammates. I'm sure at the very least it's going to serve as a real morale booster to his former British Hurricane teammates since they can play alongside him again. Finally, we get to discuss the supports. Both of them are familiar faces actually. Ripa and Kelix have both already been in the league, making them veterans along with Blase. The common consensus is that Ripa is a good pickup and Kelix is a bad one amongst the fans. Starting with Ripa, it's within reason to assume that some of you might have forgotten about him if you were a fan of the league back in Season 2. He played like a map or two on the Gladiators, then was out of the league. If you only became a fan of the league this year or recently and you don't really know much about the league's history, yes, Ripa used to be on the Gladiators. He's always possessed a certain level of promise to him. People were hopeful for him even back then. The Glad simply had no reason to use him because they liked Shaz so much. He's a mechanically sound player with a good history to him. He played for two of the most well-known teams in the history of European contenders. First Team Giganti, then British Hurricane after spending a year on the Gladiators bench. He's another player on this team who could be a shining bright spot. Now he has the opportunity to truly show us what he's capable of. He's only gotten better since joining the Hurricane, so my interest in him has peaked. He's a pretty solid Zen player, and I think that his Ana and his Baptiste are pretty alright as well. I'm excited to see what he can do. Okay, so what about Kelix? Why is it that nobody is excited about him? Well, at this point, we kind of know what he's capable of. He's not going to get any better. As the competition within the league has increased over the years, Kelix has fallen further and further in the Overwatch League main support rankings, and British Hurricane didn't really do him any favors. I could be wrong, but he more than anybody else on this team, it felt like, at least in my opinion, really benefited from this team's success and being around a lot of solid players from that region. If this was like his second chance in the league, I would be less reluctant to have faith in him. But this is trip number 3 and it's his 4th season. If he is greatly improved, I would be surprised. He's consistently been a weak point on the teams he's played for over the years. I gave Kelix more chances than most, I would say, because I was willing to give him shots even after his second year on Boston. But now even I kind of lack faith at this point. Kelix, in my opinion, has the most to prove on his team because of something like this. He has a bigger chip on his shoulder than anybody else, and it's going to be a major challenge for him to prove the doubters wrong. He's not going to have this super OP and dominant team to hide behind anymore. His team is mortal now. Kelix is going to seriously have to work hard, or this might end up being his final chance that he gets in the league. I wish him nothing but the best of luck. So now for my overall thoughts on the Spitfire roster. So, in my honest opinion, they're just okay. Not the worst team in the league, but still close to the bottom, at least on paper. Their tank line feels like a strong point in my opinion, and there's a few other pieces I have great interest in, like Sparker, Reaper, and Blase even. I have no problem with them going with a near fully EU-based team after 2 failed years in a row going full Korean. You're going to be a marketable team in the EU region, and you kind of have a chance to establish a fun rivalry of sorts with the Paris Eternal. This roster appears to not be built for major success. I'm hoping they prove me wrong, but right now I do have my concerns. They possess promising talent, but they're nowhere near top-notch. The fact of the matter is that the best talents tend to stem from Korea, so you're going to take a risk by going down this near fully EU path. But I'm sure the higher-ups running London are aware of this. They're doing the best they can with this new plan. I just can't help but wonder if they could have done a little bit better with their execution. I guess we'll find out soon enough. One other minor bit of London Spitfire news to get to before we transition to a new team is the fact that they did go ahead and finally release Fuze from their main roster. No surprises there. With all the rumors going around of them going fully EU, this was bound to happen. They don't want him on their team. It's a little sad because I think that Fuze definitely deserves another shot in the league, but hey, what can you do? It's a shame because Fuze never really got the opportunity to truly show what he had at the Overwatch League level. He had some potential, I would say, on Fusion University. Not a ton of people were super excited about him, but Sanguinar kind of just came in and proved to be a real hidden gem of sorts, and he developed super quickly, leaving Fuze on the bench for a majority of this year. If he decides that he keeps wanting to try and be a pro, then I really do hope that he takes some time to grind in contenders, then hopefully he can re-earn his spot in the league one day and actually be a starter. But for now, all we can really do is keep a watchful eye on him as he decides what to do next with his career as he enters free agency. That's enough London for one video though. Now we can talk about the Vancouver Titans, who announced the 7th man of their roster. The 3rd DPS joining their rotation is Teru. Not gonna lie, I was a little caught off guard by this one. It's true that the Titans are looking to rebuild through Tier 2 talent, but it was kind of hard to envision them getting anybody from Korea. They never ruled out that possibility, but I kind of assumed they were going to stick to NA and EU talent, especially after that horrible breakup with their former runaway roster. But here they are proving me wrong, and I'm all for it. Why limit yourselves to the potential talent you can acquire? Teru is not the most well-known Korean DPS out there, but I still approve without a doubt. You would have to assume Teru was not the most expensive player in the world to sign, and I'm really not too sure how many teams were genuinely interested in him. So there's that going for Vancouver, plus Teru could become a reliable player who they develop over time. From the looks of it, he could become a pretty good playmaker on the various projectile characters in the game. He might not have played all that much at times, but I'm willing to bet he learned a lot as a member of O2 Blast for nearly 1 entire year. I like this pickup a ton. It adds some spice to that DPS lineup, you know? He's a serious wildcard who might be able to raise his value like how Shockwave did. Kind of like with pretty much all of their other new recruits, Teru is kind of this low-risk, high-reward type of pickup. If he pans out, then fantastic. If not, it's really not the end of the world because of the very low expectations Vancouver already has on them. If the Titans were trying to contend, I would be more concerned. But there's basically no pressure on a team that's already widely considered to be bottom tier. Speaking of ranking this team, that gets me to my next point. The Titans roster appears to basically be complete. It's nothing special. My expectations as of right now are fairly low. You have a few players who might be alright, but nothing that gets you extremely excited. I don't believe it's crazy to state that it would be seen as a major accomplishment for this team this year if they finished any higher than bottom 3. I'd hate to sound negative, but that's what the general outlook is, I would say. It does not look very good. Nothing on this team really shouts out at you, and that's all there really is to it. Next up, we have some great news for all you Seoul fans out there. The nightmare of potentially not signing an off-tank is over. After continuing to impress back on Gen G, Toyou has been promoted to a full-time member of the Dynasty for the 2021 season. No more Marvel Zarya, no more Marvel Diva. They have a more versatile off-tank on the team now. Toyou already showed what he's capable of a little bit last year, and he's just a very promising talent overall. I'm pretty happy with how he played in the recent Contenders Gauntlet as well. Toyou seems capable. He might not be the #1 off-tank prospect in the world currently, but he's a solid option, no doubt. He seems pretty consistent for the most part, so hopefully he can provide a well-needed boost to that Seoul tank line. I trust we're going to see him around if Zarya or Diva is the play without a doubt. But Sigma is where things get interesting. In my opinion, Marvel Sigma is currently a little bit better. Toyou could use a little bit of improvement on that character. His efficiency with Gravitic Flux, for example, is a bit shaky. So there's probably a chance you could still see Marvel come in for Sigma heavy compositions and metas, but at the same time, maybe Seoul's going to feel inclined to transition Marvel back onto main tank because Gesture is, well, not the best. Again, it might be meta dependent because you want Gesture in if Orisa is the meta. His level of play may have declined a lot, but he can still play a good enough Orisa currently. Seoul's tank situation is going to be a lot of fun to follow this year. I just hope they make use of someone with as much potential as Toyou. He could prove to be a real difference maker if you fix a few things that he needs to work on. He's a reliable playmaking off-tank, and he showed this a ton throughout the gauntlet in my opinion, so definitely check out some of the Gen G games he was a part of if you don't believe me. From the looks of it, this might have been the final move the Dynasty have announced for the year. I'm hoping I'm wrong because I would love to see them get like another DPS or something, let's say, but I'm not getting my hopes up. The trend for most rosters this year is to stick with 7 to 8 players, and Seoul have officially hit that benchmark. If this is all Seoul have to offer, then it might be a tough year. Finally, we have a bit of Boston Uprising coaching news. To round out their coaching staff, they signed Barroi as their new second assistant coach. It's interesting to see Boston not get any Korean coaches to complement Lori, but this particular pickup is not something to be mad about. Barroi became somewhat well established on Toronto. He's been there since the team was first formed. At first he was just the team's analyst, but eventually found himself in a coaching position during Season 3. Even with all of Toronto's failures, people have continued to like and respect him, and I have confidence he can do well on Boston. He has better coaches next to him and a roster that appears to be more talented than either of the previous Toronto teams he was a part of. The fact that he can kind of serve as a coach and an analyst at the same time is some serious bang for your buck if you're Boston. He might prove to be a highly valuable contributor this year thanks to his various skills. But that's pretty much all I have to say about this specific pickup. I'm sorry that I don't have any exciting news for you just yet, Boston fans. They really are taking their time with their final player announcements. Sadly, they can take as long as they want too. So long as they met that minimum roster requirement by the deadline a couple of days ago, they can do as they please pretty much. But as soon as anything drops, I will probably cover it sooner rather than later. Pretty much every team is done with roster announcements, so there's not much of a point in sticking it in a recap and waiting for a long period of time. The next news video here on the channel will probably be at least mostly all about your team, Boston fans, so stay tuned. And with that being said, that's going to do it for this episode of the off-season recap, and this sadly might have been the last one of the series, so I seriously do hope that you enjoyed it and found it informative. As usual, I would appreciate it so much if you could give this video a like and subscribe if you're new around here. Feel free to let me know how you feel about these roster moves while you're at it, because I'd love to hear your opinion down in the comment section. And as always, thanks so much for watching this video, I really do appreciate your support, and until next time, this is ATP, signing out. Peace.